All right, we are getting ready to go live here for the California Festival of Speed. So I'll just let you, if you're turning in from the late night playset, take your time and let's get this rolling. Yeah, I'm live. Okay, just all right. Hello, everybody. What is going on? I am Joey. So I am from the YouTube channel The Stiglette. That is my name. Well, not my actual name, of course, but this is my very first live stream. And as a motorsport fan, I've always just loved karting, driving, PCA car shows, and just the whole 9 yards. And so that is how I got the name The Stiglette. My favorite show is Top Gear, and so the Stig, I thought I'm the mini Stig, and that's how I got the Stiglette. So a little bit about myself. I first started getting into cars, it was about 4 or 5 years ago, and I remember I went to my very first car show, and I just fell in love with cars. And it wasn't actually until 2 years ago that I joined the Porsche Club of America, and that was a decision I definitely think was a good one, because the people from PCA are so nice and amazing, and I've made so many great connections and just learning from so many amazing people about their cars and the stories they have with them. And so today they invited me to host the virtual California Festival of Speed in this live stream. And so we're going to check out interviews from people with Patrick Long, Martina Kwan, Scott Mann, and so many awesome, amazing people. And so I thought I'd show you my first interview today with one of our exclusive guests of Patrick Long. You may have heard of Patrick. He's a racing driver for Porsche, and he's raced for them for quite a while now. But he's just a super nice guy, super cool. So here's our conversation about him and I talking about sim racing and how that connects to real live streams. You don't get editing. It's always a new experience for me. But we're going to be talking about our experience from sim racing to real life driving. I don't know what's happening. I have viewers right now, so just please. All right, let's find the Patrick Long interview, and here we go.
How you doing? It's Patrick Long. I'm here at Base 51, which is a simulator center for CXC, a simulator partner of mine. Been testing and racing quite a bit in this certain coronavirus situation. Racers are sure to get their outlet, and my partners and Porsche specifically have been keen in us getting active. I've used simulation a little bit in my background for learning tracks and doing coaching, but I've never been part of the online racing community. So certainly diving in head first, and great to join you and speak to you about this weekend.
Oh, welcome to the online racing community.
Thank you. It's certainly eye-opening for me. The kids these days have lots of time, and they're super fast. So it's humbling for me to join some of these races, but also having a lot of fun racing. iRacing has an internal iRock championship that's running live on Wednesday nights on Fox Sports 1. So that's been a little bit more fun, the fixed setup, and some of the pro drivers who aren't on simulation all the time. But there are other guys like Kevin Harvick or Scott Speed who are regular sim racers, and they're fast in both the real world and the sim world.
Oh, that's awesome. So I'll ask my first question. So it's my understanding that obviously you're new to sim racing, and you're also one of the world's best racing drivers. And so how long have you been doing sim racing, and do you think it helps with your actual driving in real life?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a fan of video games all the way back to race driving and hard driving at the arcade where you had to put quarters in, but that was long before you were born. I'm aging myself a little bit here, but when it started to get really serious is when iRacing came to market. I think that was a platform that really changed my sort of engagement or interest in it. Once tracks started being scanned, and then there were some great companies out there. Chris Constantine, the founder of CXC, is a good friend of mine. I knew his father through automotive journalism, and so I started working with their team, giving them feedback and also training. That would have been around 2009. So it's been a pretty regular part of training for me, but that was offline. I wasn't doing a lot of online racing, and in this kind of low point of traditional racing, I've tried to jump in and get up to speed. So it's really enjoyable.
So, what do you like and dislike about sim racing? Because obviously, I've heard from real racing drivers that, while you can train on it, obviously you don't have the G forces or any of the feelings in the car.
What I really like about it is the mental outlet is very, very similar. The ability to focus and hit your marks and be razor sharp and picture perfect, whether you're in a race car going 180 miles an hour at California Speedway or you're doing it in simulation on iRacing, you have to be so mentally prepared and you have to stay right with what the task is in front of you. And as soon as you slip into another conscious thought process, thinking about if you left your keys on the counter or if you left the water running or you're not having a good time or your back hurts or it's too hot and you don't like the setup of your car, that's when mistakes happen. That's when lap times start to fade. And so in simulation, I get that same amount. If anything, it's actually taking more concentration for me because I'm less up to speed and used to the visuals that you need to be just so perfect in simulation. And so that would lead into what I'm struggling with. I don't say I have any dislikes to sim racing. I love that I can race around the world with different enthusiasts at 24/7. I'm often jet lagged or I have young family. So when they're asleep, I can jump online and actually compete in a race. So, but back to what I'm not really vibing with right now is that you don't have that G sensor that you have in racing where you can really start to understand the feedback that your tire gives you. They're evolving that in iRacing with tire models and then simulation partners and people who build these rigs like CXC. They're giving the driver more feedback, but that's the part that's the last 10% that I'm still honing in on for pace.
So, what is the current simulator setup you use?
Well, what I have behind me, you can see the two actuators here. This is a full motion sim, massive triple screen. And this is a sim center here in Hawthorne, California, where you can come and have a pro coach who sits behind you on 3 screens. Luckily, there's glass and it's a separate room. So even in these times, I can be isolated and I can have some help from one of their pro coaches, but we're definitely practicing safety in this day and age. I have a sim at home where I'm practicing when I'm not in these iRacing races or in the IMSA race that runs every 2 weeks on a Thursday night. So enjoying it. The force feedback of the steering wheel is key. Your screens and the refresh rate is very key. Syncing all that up, I mean, for the guys and girls who are racing this weekend at the California Festival of Speed, they know it can be as technical and complex from a software and a hardware standpoint as a race car. In some ways, if you're racing vintage, this is a much more software-based game. And so that means you have to support partners. And so I'm lucky that the CXC guys have been sort of in my corner. They've been a partner of mine for the last decade.
No, you have a very good point there. And I think I definitely have to go down to Base 51 one of these days and try out the simulators because I've always heard about them, and it's so amazing the technology available now.
I'm pretty spoiled. I'm used to having a very, very astute crew around me who makes sure that my tools are sharp and I can just jump in and focus on speed. And so it's hard when you go into a situation like this where you have to tune your own stuff at home. And so Base 51 is a sim center. There's multiple sims, sometimes 12 or 13 running at one time. Food and drink. They do private events as well as pro coaching one-on-one like the room that I'm in. So yeah, check it out.
So I understand you're a California kid and you started out with karting and you ended up with a career in motorsports, obviously. Can you tell us a little bit about, when you first started racing as a kid and some of the details, and then, what it was like when you first went to Europe to start driving?
Yeah, for sure. Southern California native. I grew up sort of as a third generation racing fan on the short tracks of Ascot, Ventura, going over to Phoenix, PIR, and watching the NASCAR races. And I was always just very, very crazy about anything with wheels or engines. Naturally, go-karts are your first step, or at least they were then in the late 80s for me. Now we have indoor karting, we have simulation, we have a lot of different ways, autocross, to get started. But for me, it was karting. From karting, I progressed into Formula car racing with Bob Bondurant as a mentor of mine, and Skip Barber, who also gave me a scholarship into some single-seater racing series. I remember racing at California Speedway Fontana in the Skip Barber series back in the late 90s. So about 10 years into my racing career, I progressed into single-seaters. From there, chasing the dream of Formula One and Champ Car and IndyCar. So I went over to Europe to sort of follow my dreams. I had a scholarship from Elf Fuels, who was a karting scholarship participant at that time. And so I was lucky to have some sponsors that helped me to get over to Europe. From there, it was full throttle trying to raise money to be able to compete. And as you know, that's one of the hardest parts about racing is finding the funding. And Red Bull came calling. There was a Formula One driver search for an American through Danny Sullivan, sort of the mentor of that program. And that's when I met the guys at Porsche. Danny had a relationship with Uwe Bredel and Helmut Greiner, who were two impactful characters in Porsche's ladder system. They had a UPS junior team. The global shipping company had stepped up and partnered with Porsche to have two young drivers in an initiative each year racing in the Super Cup and the Carrera Cup, one make 996 Porsche Cup cars. And that was my introduction to GT racing. And only a year later, in 2003, at the end of 2003, I found myself at the Petit Le Mans for my first endurance sports car race. I was a Porsche junior at that point, and really just earning my stripes and trying to get the signature on the contract. And fortunately, I was able to get a ride and join ALMS in 2004. And I've been with IMSA pretty much since then. So coming up about 18 years now, I've been racing for Porsche as their lone American factory driver. And every single day I wake up and I just pinch myself that I get to work for a company like Porsche. And as a Southern California kid, it's been widely noted that this is a massive market for Porsche, and the PCA is a big part of that. And it's been great to get to know the different families and generations of the PCA, and even to take part in races. I've taken part in the California Festival of Speed, as well as the 48 Hours in Sebring, and joined even Road America. So all through the country, I've been able to join the PCA. But yeah, Southern California is definitely home, and I live in Manhattan Beach. So I think if the Festival of Speed was going on this weekend in a traditional format, I'd be out there saying hello to some friends. But in this case, I'll be joining in and checking out what you guys are doing online.
Oh, that is awesome. And, it's always great to hear stories where, you actually, you do achieve your dream where, you started from karting like me right now. And now, you're driving for a big manufacturer like Porsche. I mean, it's just like, if I told you that, 20 years ago, I mean, that'd be crazy. And that's just so amazing. So,
Yeah.
do you have any advice for people getting into sim racing and, performance driving with, racing and all that?
I think it's a little bit of the same of any type of racing or getting into any type of sport. Look for advice. People are happy to give you their advice. Read forums and try to understand a direction that you want to take, what your budget is, what your time allowance is, and what your goals are. I think there's different ways of getting outlets in sim racing, depending on if you're trying to work on learning racetracks, if you're trying to refine your racecraft, if you really just want to have an outlet for motorsport when you're not otherwise engaged on the racetrack. So depending on that, I think it's about finding the right setup and then, focusing on what matters, which is putting the laps in.
You have a very good point there. So obviously with racing, behind the scenes, you don't really hear too much. So what are some of the challenges of having a motorsport career? Being away from home, not being with family, and moving from city to city and all that.
Yeah, the challenges are like many people who travel for a living. You definitely are compromised in your surroundings. They change often. There's a compromise in that you just have to find discipline in how you sort of integrate into home life versus on the road, and forcing yourself to have regular schedules while you're traveling with different time zones and through different countries. But I find that that's a challenge that I've had for a long time, and I've grown into it. It's not a burden. It's just part of the job. When it comes down to it, really the trick in being a professional driver is not just strapping in and driving your best. You really are forced to hit a level of performance that might not be within you that day or that stint or that lap. And you have to be outside your comfort zone very often. The competition is so high and the expectation is very vast as far as who's behind the scenes, looking at the data, looking at the software. There's so much more sort of big brother mindset to motorsport these days that the pressure and the stakes are higher and higher every year. And like any pro sport, sustaining a drive and being able to put up with the pressure and that sometimes takes the fun out of it. But in reality, when we check out and look at this in retrospect, we're all just car guys and girls who love to do this, and the challenges are just the struggles that you put in to prepare, and then when you find success with your team, it's all worth it.
No, it's very true. The success always outweighs definitely the challenges of everything because you're always putting in so much work just to make those very small gains, hundredths of a second. But in the end, you're definitely right. It definitely pays off. So, what has been the very best part about your racing career?
I think the people are the best part of life. The different types of relationships that you forge. A common bond and a common thread is that Porsche as a manufacturer, Porsche Racing draws in all walks of life from different backgrounds, but we share a common bond and a passion, which is that type of car. And it opens the doors, and I've been able to meet so many people and stay in touch and forge relationships and start businesses. That's the byproduct that I wouldn't want to give back. Driving sleek, sexy race cars, and being able to spray champagne on the podium, those will be the moments that you brag about. But when it all comes down to it, what you have are relationships when all this is said and done. And it's still a journey for me. I'm meeting new people every day, and it's just part of the drill is getting out there and engaging. And certainly in a time like this where we're all staying at home and really having to watch our social interactions, I think it's a good time to reflect and realize how much we all miss that.
Oh, that is very true. The social interactions often people take for granted, but it really does play a big part of it. Well, thank you so much for doing this interview with me and helping out with the virtual Festival of Speed. All right, so we are back live here again, and just want to thank everyone joining into this interview. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure to do that. Subscribe to California Festival of Speed and the Stiglette as well. And so, just want to briefly talk about some of the giveaways that are happening and the Patrick Long interview itself. And so the other thing that's cool about a live stream is we can also do a live Q&A. So a bunch of the Patrick Long interview I actually didn't use in footage. So if you have any questions about the interview, leave a comment, and I'll be doing a live Q&A right now for the next 5 minutes. So get your comments in now, in the next couple minutes, and we'll have a live Q&A. I will. Just quiet, Mom. Yeah, I know I have dinner. There's still just Mom, stop. I'm having technical difficulties. Obviously this is my very first live stream, so gotta give me a little credit doing this all on my own. Obviously I'm not having anyone do any of the work for me right now. And so, all right, well, if you guys have no questions for Patrick Long, we're going to talk about a little bit of my history behind my driving, because like Patrick Long, I started in karting as well, and I've been racing go-karts for a few years now, and it's pretty fun right now. And obviously karting is the very first step into motorsport. And so the thing about karting that's nice is getting into it. It's not very expensive compared to car racing, and you can really develop your skills. So when you get into actual racing cars, you already feel comfortable and your skill set's developed, and you're not fearing that you're going to be wasting all your money. So our next interview is with Martina Kwan, and she is a racing driver, and quite an interesting story because unlike Patrick Long, who's been doing this for many, many years, she only started racing 4 years ago. So she's a very fascinating person. So we're going to go switch to her interview right now because she's definitely a fun one, and you want to hear her story because it's quite fascinating. Let's see. Sorry about this again. I'm slow with these live streams.
Hi, I'm Martina Kwan. I'm a three-time champion race car driver in my Porsche 911 that was converted from a street legal car to a race car. And I'm also the co-founder of a new racing school, high performance driving academy, and teen car control clinics with Dwayne Dement of Vision Motorsports.
Tell me a little bit about your high performance driving school you've created.
Yeah, so Dwayne purchased a property right outside of the gates of Willow Springs in Rosamond, California, my home track. And it's going to be a private membership facility with race car storage. And then, we're both FIA licensed race car drivers, so we've decided to form a new racing school, high performance driving academies for any make and model, not just Porsches, as well as something that I'm really excited about as well, teen car control clinics, for the safety of teenagers driving, first 16, 17-year-olds.
And how old do you have to be, or what's kind of your age range for the teen car control clinics?
Yeah, so you do need to have a license and be a minimum of 16 years old. It's really for insurance purposes at the racetrack, but yeah, 16.
Okay. And how long have you been racing for?
So I started 4 years ago. I had, dabbled with track days at the beginning of 4 years ago, and I really enjoyed it. It reminded me of when I used to horseback ride as a child. And it's sort of the racetracks here are mostly desert racetracks. So I used to live in Bahrain in the desert, so there were some similarities, and I really enjoyed driving out there. So yeah, but 3.5 years ago, I decided that I wanted to take it more seriously and become a race car driver.
You said you lived in Bahrain. Have you been obviously to the Bahrain International Circuit?
I have not actually. It's actually would be one of my bucket list items, as well as Yas Marina in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, those are two of my favorite tracks for sure, especially the lighting at night and everything. Always love night races. I think they're so amazing.
Totally.
Obviously, we know you also, besides your real racing, are doing sim racing. And how long have you been doing sim racing for?
Yeah, so I started sim racing or just practicing on the simulator last June when I was approached by Celine to drive semi-professionally in the Celine S1 car and the Celine Cup. So in order to get to know the tracks that I was going to drive at Portland, Road America, Watkins Glen, and Las Vegas, I thought it was really useful to go on a simulator. So I started at Base 51, which is kind of a professional organization. They have, some motion rigs that are really sort of highly advanced, expensive ones, and you can do private coaching with them. And so I started with that, and then I switched over to PEC, the Porsche Experience Center LA, which has also, a bunch of simulators, which was great for practice. I mean, I would sit there for 2 hours at a time, full racing suit, helmet, getting the whole experience. And then finally, one day I arrived there on a Monday and I didn't realize they were closed. I was so eager to go practice that I went out into parking lot, looked on Craigslist, found one in Burbank, which was, only like an hour away, and went straight there and purchased the one that I have here at home.
Oh, that's awesome. No, I love the simulators at the Porsche Experience Center there. And I actually set a Nürburgring record there with the 919. And so, no, I agree with you. It's definitely awesome to start, with trying out simulators before you get your own. Because obviously with simulators, I mean, like you said, there's the simple ones you can have in your house, but then there's, the full motion, there's curved screens, virtual reality. So what simulator racing setup do you have?
Okay, so I want to show you actually. So it's basically a ride seat on a rig. And then the monitor is a Samsung, I believe it's a 48-inch gaming monitor. And then the actual, it's a McLaren wheel, and then the wheelbase and pedals are all from Fanatec. And then in the back corner, you'll see the Oculus Rift up there, but I don't really enjoy using it. It's, it was kind of cool to get the virtual reality goggles, but I prefer the monitor. I mean, the Samsung one is curved, and I think it's just as good as anyone that has like 3 big monitors.
Yeah, I agree with you. I've tried VR simulators before, and while I think they're great because you can look around, the technology is still very new, so the resolution's not that high, and then, also it kind of strains your eye with the screen being close. But with a curved monitor, you still get that wide angle, so you can actually, look in your mirrors and look around. Yeah, you can almost look around fully, and it's pretty amazing.
Exactly. I mean, that's what I would do practicing for the Celine. I would stop in the corners and kind of just, look left and right, and it's really amazing. I mean, it's quite immersive.
It is, for sure. So, One thing I've also heard about sim racing is obviously, in a real car, you can feel the speed of it and the G forces and get an actual feeling for the car. Where in sim racing, you have force feedback, but obviously the speed and G forces aren't there. So, what do you like and dislike about sim racing?
So I think right now I love the fact that it's available. Now that most of the racetracks have closed. I mean, Willow Springs is still open, luckily, but it's really fun. It's a fun coronavirus, pandemic activity, if you will, to be at home, and I'm really thankful to have it. So what I really like about it is, especially getting to know the tracks. That's like number one. So if you've never been somewhere, it's really, when I arrived at Road America after doing the simulator, I was like, wow, I've been here. I literally felt like I've been here because I was so familiar with the surroundings. But then, of course, the real thing is completely different. But the other thing that I like is just the camaraderie, of being a sim race. I've only really practiced with others. My first race is this weekend's California Festival of Speed rookie class race on Sunday. So I'm excited and nervous about that. But what I don't like about a simulator is it's not the real thing. So it's a game, and I think people really need to realize that. A lot of people think like, oh, I've done 50,000 laps at Laguna Seca, so I'm ready to like get into a race car and drive the real thing, which is a little dangerous. So I do also think that the simulator kind of can give you some bad habits, like downshifting too fast is totally okay, with the sim, but it's not okay with the real race car. And the other thing is, for example, at Auto Club Speedway, I've noticed during practice, some people are driving below the apron on the front straight of Fontana, and which of course is illegal and would get you a black flag in real life. So I think one of the dangers is that you get into bad habits. So that's one of the reasons why, if I'm using it to learn a track, about 4 days before I stop completely, no more simulator, because it's so different from the real thing. And I don't want, you know, stuff to be messed up when I get into the real race car.
That is a good point you bring up is, why you can learn tracks and somewhat understand your car. The small details where, you're hunting for tenths of a second, that's the stuff you learn in real life because you can actually feel everything. And with the simulator, you can gain time on the simulator, but the way you gain time on the simulator probably won't be the same in real life. And at that point, is it really a benefit or not? And then also, I think one thing you mentioned that was very good was, the small things like car balance. You definitely can't feel that on a simulator, even with full motion. And, downshifting early, obviously that can very much upset the balance. And, with the simulator, you have no idea. You're just braking and downshifting.
Exactly. And I almost feel guilty, doing it on the simulator, like, wait, uh, yeah. Yeah, it's a different animal, but it's great to have. It's a great game to have, and it's really fun.
So, do you have any advice for people getting into sim racing?
Well, I think the people are tempted to kind of go on Amazon Prime and get like the cheap wheel and the cheap throttle. Forget it; it's a waste of money. I did that, never use it, threw it out because it just the feeling is completely off. So I would really recommend, if anything, of the three most important things are getting a Fanatec wheelbase, and throttle for sure. Because I, at least in my affordability range, that was what I think is the best in the sim racing product world in terms of that.
And I agree with you for sure, because one thing people don't realize in the simulator is your only feeling you have is the force feedback in the wheel and the pedals. So if you compromise that system, you are compromising your sim driving. And,
Yeah.
On my system, I made sure the wheel was actually good with force feedback. And I remember one time I tried turning it off just to see what it'd be like, and I was like, there's nothing. And it's a good point is, when you actually get a system, you'd obviously, you don't want to spend thousands of dollars, but you want to invest in something that you can actually benefit from.
For sure. This wheel, driving the roval of the Auto Club Speedway for this weekend. I mean, you really need that feeling because it's a very subtle control of the wheel.
And that's a very good point there. Is it's just the small details that, now with the technology available, you can actually somewhat implement that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much for doing this interview. and helping out with this year's virtual California Festival of Speed. All right, so we are back. That was the interview with Martina Kwan. And what's funny is one thing that Patrick Long and her both mentioned, which I think is actually a very good point of getting into sim racing, is to actually try out other people's simulators or go to a simulator place like Base 51. And I've actually haven't been to Base 51 yet. And I was supposed to race there in March, but obviously due to this whole coronavirus situation, that race got canceled. So one day I'll have to make it to Base 51 because they do have some of the coolest simulators out there, for sure. So my next interview is actually with myself. I don't want to say it's a self-interview, but I'm talking about my own sim racing unit and kind of how the sim racing unit works and how exactly do you set one up and what do you need to do with it. And a lot of people don't understand with sim racing, it's not that hard to do. You just need a television, a computer of some sort, and then the wheel, the pedals, and then a shifter if you want. And it all sets up very basic. And so I thought I would show you right now my setup that I currently use right now. So let's switch over. Sorry about the dead time again. With these editing softwares and behind the scenes, obviously, it's not going to be a quick transition, but we do the best we can. Obviously, this is my very first live stream, so. Hello, welcome to the racing room. So this is where I keep my racing simulator, and this is where I get to do all my practicing for racing when I'm not at the actual track. So let me give you a tour of what my setup is and show you how you can get into sim racing. So this is my setup here. It's pretty basic, but it's very functional. That's the important bit. So the thing about sim racing a lot of people don't understand is you don't need a full motion simulator or a crazy virtual reality thing. You can start out very basic and cheap, and that's what I've done, but you don't want to go too cheap. Obviously, you want to have a good quality of product, and that will help, obviously, your racing improve, and you can feel details in the track. So let me take you through my setup. So what I have done here is quite the MacGyver setup, but I had a PlayStation 4, and with that, I can use Gran Turismo, which is a great simulator. However, it was only available on PlayStation. If you're on Xbox, you can do Forza Motorsport, another good one. On PC, you can do iRacing, and then for all systems, you can do Assetto Corsa, which is kind of using for crossplay, where you can race with people who use different operating systems. So I hooked it up to this Sony TV, which I actually originally had, but you can get TV monitors in your correct size, whatever size you need, and price-wise, they're pretty decent. So that's hooked up running Gran Turismo Sport, which if you have a PlayStation, I think that's the best simulator available out there, along with the Assetto Corsa. And then what I've done here is I've added this coffee table here, and then this table right here. So this coffee table here holds my steering wheel, and then this table here with my helmet and gloves, that holds my shifter. So the steering wheel I went for was the Thrustmaster T150. It's an entry-level wheel, but it's a very good one. The quality on this is excellent for the price. And this will only cost you about $150, and that was back a few years ago. But I think if you're going to go for a steering wheel, I'd actually recommend the Thrustmaster TGT, simply because it's pretty much the same as this, a little improved, and price-wise it's the same, but it has rotary dials. Now you might say, what are rotary dials? So if you look at these different labels I have, what's cool about sim racing is as you're racing, you can actually adjust things in the car. And in a real race car, you have a thing called a rotary dial, which is a dial you physically turn. So you don't have to look and figure out, which buttons are you pressing, are you +1, -1 in your brake balance, your fuel mixture and whatnot. And so that's why rotaries are great. Now this wheel does not have rotary buttons. That's kind of a downfall. You get paddle shifters and force feedback, which is great. Now what is force feedback? Force feedback is essentially a system where right now, since the wheel's off, there's no resistance to me turning. It's just kind of loose, and it feels like steering on a Toyota Prius. Not a good thing. However, when you turn the steering wheel on, there's a motor in this unit back here, and what this does is it creates resistance, and so certain cars will have heavier steering than others, depending if they have power steering and whatnot, and you can feel the road through bumps, and it'll actually react to you, and so it genuinely feels like you're actually driving, because you can literally feel the road through the simulator, even though you're not actually even driving. So, since I like to drive manual transmission vehicles a lot, I did go for a shifter. Now, unfortunately, shifters are rather expensive. This is a Thrustmaster TH8A. This cost me about $170. The quality's great on it, and I love it. So if you're going to go for a shifter, this is definitely a good one to go for. Now, the shifter itself and the pedals and everything, it all hooks into the back of the steering wheel. Then that plugs into a power cord, and then that all goes into the PlayStation or a computer if you're running on that. So the pedals. People take for granted how important the pedals are. Often they'll spend money on a really expensive steering wheel and then just totally cheap out on pedals. And people forget that your pedals do matter. So what I've gone for here is the Thrustmaster T3PA. Now this Thrustmaster steering wheel that actually came with a set of pedals, but I didn't like them very much. And it was only a gas and a brake. And obviously if you want to drive a car the manual, you're going to need a clutch pedal. So this set of pedals here cost me about only $80. And they have and this is kind of the mid-range model. They have a version called the Pro. It's apparently better. But I think quality-wise, these are decent enough for the price. So obviously you get a gas, a brake, and a clutch. And what's nice is you can actually adjust them. So I actually slid them further out from driving the formula cars or a car with a sequential gearbox where I don't really need the clutch. I can slide these out and then left foot brake, which is super nice. So like I said, it's very customizable to whatever you're running. Now as far as my mount, normally you would have a cockpit, but again, those are very expensive too. I didn't want to do that. So I used a bunch of old wood boards and a footrest with duct tape, mounted that all together, and then that's pushing up against the shelf so I can apply full brake pressure, and that's how I get my pedals the way it is. That's all attached to this coffee table, holds the steering wheel, which has these nice paddle shifters, and then my shifter right here is hooked up to this table. Now, one cool thing about the technology available now is the fact that, let's say you're not in a car with a manual, but it has a sequential gearbox, but it's not a paddle shift. What's nice, or you're doing rally driving, what's really nice about that is the shifters come with this mount. And what this does is it's a sequential gearbox. So say you're driving a rally car or something, you can just pull back to upshift and push forward to downshift, or vice versa if you flip it. So that's a really cool setup you can do as well. It's very customizable, so you can drive pretty much every single car in the world on one system, and that's really cool. Now the seat itself you might laugh at. Yes, it is my original car seat, but the reason I use this is actually in a formula car, your seat position is very laid back for a low center of gravity. That's how I mounted it. And it's also very small and tight and has big bolsters like a racing seat. So surprisingly, it's actually realistic. Seems a bit odd, but I think that's actually one of the cool things. So altogether, with the PlayStation and everything, this setup cost me around $500 to $600. And I think for the money and the quality I went for, it's been great. Like I said, it's entry level, but it's not. I didn't totally cheap out. I did want to have good quality materials and actual feedback. And I've had the system for almost 5 years now, and it's been excellent. No problems I've run into. And that's the great thing about sim racing is, you know, the expensive bit's that initial purchase, but once you buy everything, it's free. And you can practice as much as you want, drive as much as you want. And it's just so accessible. And I think that's the really cool thing about sim racing is you really don't need to have a lot of money to get into it. All right, so once again, we've reached another moment of dead time. That was the end of that interview about my sim setup. So I'm just going to turn my camera back on. And here we go. So I am now back. We're going to do a live Q&A right now. Now, obviously, for me, there's a 30-second delay with YouTube Live. So that kind of explains some of the dead time with the questions. So I'll wait for you guys to get your questions in right now. And I'll do a live Q&A for the next 5 minutes. So if you have any questions, let me know right now. And so in the meantime, I thought I'd play a hot lap of a Porsche 919 around Le Mans while we're waiting for this YouTube delay. All right, our 919 at Le Mans is not playing, so that's just the way it is. Oh no, our camera. Like I said, I'm new to this live streaming. It's a very complicated process, and so it is definitely a new experience for sure because everything's on the spot, you're preset, and so I'll do a behind the scenes video later, just kind of taking you through how the whole thing works. All right, so our first question is, do I wear gloves and shoes when I drive? Actually, it's a very good question. So usually I do wear gloves just because when I'm actually karting or driving a race car, obviously, I'd be wearing gloves, and so I'm used to having the grip. As far as the shoes go, the pedal setup is very small. That's a little unrealistic, and unfortunately with my shoes, they just won't fit, and I want a good pedal feel, so I actually don't wear shoes when I'm on the simulator, but I do usually wear gloves. I just think you have more grip, and I think over long races as well, it's just more comfortable. But again, with sim racing, like I said, it's very customizable. You can do whatever you want at the moment. See if we have any more questions from our viewers right now, and I'll answer those right now. All right, looks like we have no questions. So now that we're sort of at the halfway point of our live stream, one thing that's cool about this year's Virtual Festival Speed is we're having a bunch of awesome giveaways. So part of these giveaways are from the people who did the photo competition, the kids coloring competition, and then the build your own either model car or toilet paper race car, just build your own car thing, I guess. Well, it sounds a bit weird. So we do have a list of winners here that PCA has chosen, so we're going to announce them here. So our first one, from Flat 6 Rebel, congratulations, you are the winner. I think it's your kid, obviously, at 2 years old. And so you'll be winning a Porsche Motorsport baseball cap. So just send an email, and we'll get in touch with you for that. Our next one, from Clive Cars, with an 8-year-old kid. You've won a Porsche Motorsport Kids backpack. And then from Mark Miller 001 with a GT3R with a 13-year-old kid, you have won the Patrick Long Flying Lizard race car poster, and I believe that is signed by Patrick Long as well. So that's definitely something really cool to win for sure. See our next racing winners we have from SoCal Canadian with a model race car, green. You've won a Porsche Motorsport baseball cap. And then from, I'm going to blow this username, Smivita, some underscores in between, so it says scribbling. You have won 2 baseball caps for the Porsche Motorsport baseball cap. And then I believe this is our photo contest. A lot of participants in that, obviously, is car photography. Quite a big thing these days. From 9972 with a Porsche 911 Turbo S, you have won a Porsche Motorsport keyring. And then from Suave83SC with a 1983 911 SC, good username there, with a ruby red metallic, one of my favorite colors, you have won a really cool one. So it's a 2 set of 917 prints and a keyring. So I don't have an actual photo of it, but it's an amazing car photographer. He took a 917 on track and just some beautiful photos of that. And so you'll be given those, and they'll be on social media. So make sure to go check those out. And congratulations to all those who won. There will be more giveaways to announce, so we'll get on to that. And then our next guest I'm going to introduce is Scott Mann, and Scott Mann is quite the guy. Big fan of mine. We've only met once, obviously virtually, but he is based in Las Vegas, and he does to Porsches what you would never think. And a lot of purists don't really like his work, but I think it's pretty cool. So what he does is he takes Corvette engines and LS engines from Chevrolets, and he puts those engines into Porsches. And so what you end up with is these extremely powerful, fast Porsches with V8. So you're like, oh, it's a Corvette coming down the road, and it's a Porsche. It's unbelievable. And he's also the PCA Zone 8 driving instructor. So he's in charge of all the track days and kind of getting into, driving your car on track and racing with PCA. So I'm going to play that interview right now because Scott Mann is, wow, he's just such an awesome guy. So let's play that right now. All right, here we go. Scott Mann's interview right now.
Well, I'd like to say hello and thank you very much for joining Joey's little podcast. We appreciate you showing up. My name is Scott Mann. Joey has invited me to be one of his guests, and I got to tell you, it is an honor. I've Got about 25, 30 years worth of broadcasting as well as driving experience, kind of summed it all up. And I would love to share a lot of my experiences with you. So, Joey, it's your show. What would you like to know?
Well, thank you so much for joining me, Scott. This is a pleasure to have you. So, first question here. Obviously, you are the chief driving instructor for PCA Zone 8, and you have a lot of experience with track days and performance driving. So, how long have you been doing performance driving and been involved with track days and racing?
About 30 years. I think officially I started getting into some of the BMW Bob Bondurant stuff in the early 90s. It wasn't until later on in the 90s that I was actually going to a school, a Bondurant school, trying to learn things a little bit more besides racing canyons and doing just, basic DEs and things like that. And then now here we are 2020, and I've definitely done my show of racing, performance driving, pro coaching, instructing, and I don't know, off-track excursions, which you learn from that too.
So what's your favorite part of being, a driving instructor?
Teaching. I mean, pure and simple. When the light bulb goes on, when your student relaxes, when they take your advice and trust what you say, when they start realizing that they have the capability of being able to do something and do it really, really well, when they turn to you afterwards and say, I had no idea that I could do that, or I had no idea that my car could do that, or how do I do this more often? In other words, they get the bug, they mainline the drug, they do whatever it is. That enthusiasm that you get as an instructor, as a teacher, is something that it's undescribable. I was oftentimes asked, and I have been oftentimes asked, which would you rather do, teach or race? And it's funny because between the two, honestly, I can teach for the rest of my life, but I certainly can't race for the rest of my life. So if I were to have to choose one or the other, it would be to teach. And so I absolutely love to instruct.
That is awesome. No, when I get my driver's license, I'll definitely have to take a lesson from you for sure.
Well, I'll hold you to it, Joey. It would be my pleasure.
That would be awesome. So, how long have you been the chief driving instructor for PCA Zone 8?
I think the Zone 8 duties have probably been about 12 years, I'm guessing, at least 10 thereabouts, possibly 12. I've been also the chief driving instructor for the Las Vegas region of the Porsche Club now for close to 15 years, national instructor for a little over that. And then another thing that a lot of people don't know, I do instructor training for PCA Nationals. I'm one of the national DE, what do they call, safety administration boards for PCA Nationals. And I go around the country and even into Canada, and I teach instructors how to become instructors and take them through the PCA National Instructor Training School. That is one of the greatest honors that you could ever possibly imagine, because I stand before a room full of very, very experienced drivers that are all looking to become instructors. They've probably already done massive amount of instructing, but they need to go through this school in order for them to be recognized by PCA Nationals. And so they're all type A personalities. They know everything about everything, and they're very, very hard to convince or even calm down. They're basically there on a Saturday or a Sunday having to go through the calisthenics of an instructor training school when they could be out on a track and actually be driving, performance driving, versus playing role-playing duties such as trying to throw their buddy off or something like that. In other words, it's a gas to stand in front of these people and have them look at you and say, why are we even here? And by the end of the day, they're looking at me going, we had no idea how much that we needed to learn or wanted to learn. We had a great time. We were able to ask a lot of questions. And the biggest thing that I think that they take away from being instructors is I believe what they do is they also become better drivers themselves, because when you sit in the right seat and you don't necessarily have the control, yet you hear yourself talking constantly, eyes through the corner, breathe, relax your hands. You talk about different techniques like heel toe, left foot braking for advanced drivers, things like that. You start to, as the person in the right seat, you start to really identify by that yourself. And it becomes more and more of your cadence within your own mind. And so as an instructor, I always say you also become a better driver. So you can see the rewards are both directions. It's pretty amazing.
No, that is very cool for sure. So do you have any advice for people getting into performance driving, or maybe people who've never taken their car to the track?
Start off slow, cheap, kind of like I don't know if there's any boaters out there per se. I always say start off with something that's under 16 feet, that's maybe an outboard, because you're going to break a prop, you're going to run it aground, you're going to hit a rock, you're going to run over your neighbor, you're going to hit a dock, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. Don't go out and buy a $50,000 boat and end up doing all that stuff to a $50,000 boat. It's the same thing with cars. If you're going to do performance driving, I don't recommend you taking a GT3 RS, which just happens to be your daily driver, out there on a racetrack and learn how to performance drive, especially when the nannies are going to be doing about 90% of the work anyway. It's better for you to start off with an old Boxster, or maybe an old 911, like a 996 version, something like that. Not like an air-cooled one, because obviously those are worth a lot of money. But if you have the opportunity to be able to get like a 996 that isn't worth very much, that just happens to not have an IMS bearing failure or something like that, that might be a good starter. A 944 is a great platform to start off with. And if you just can't get into a Porsche right away, but you want to be able to performance drive, start off with a Miata. It doesn't matter. PCA doesn't necessarily recognize a Miata as being a Porsche. We know that, but PCA is so encompassing of all performance driving and of all badges, of all makes, and it just works out great. So that's what I would do. I'd start off slow and low.
I think you have a good point. Is also one thing that's nice with the cheaper and less powerful cars is you actually get to enjoy them more, because one, they're less intimidating to drive, and two, you can genuinely push them to the limits and feel comfortable and actually feel like you got everything out of the car. With a GT3 RS on a small track, you're like, it's good, but like I need a bigger track. And I think you have a very good point there.
Joey, your words could not have been spoken better. And I'm actually extremely impressed. Somebody has definitely instilled massive amounts of reason into your brain. And how many times I've told people that over and over and over again. You can take a slower car to the limit and learn what the limit feels like. And then you can actually identify that limit as you start moving up in speed and car capability. If you take a really fast car and you try to get it to the limit, I'm sorry, a GT3 RS, I can barely get it to the limit. I mean, that is an incredibly powerful, very, very capable car, and it's not something you want to start off with as a beginner. So, Joey, you're brilliant.
No, thank you so much. I absolutely, I agree with that for sure. So one thing I also want to talk about with you is obviously you build some crazy Porsche builds where you're putting LS engines and Corvette engines. And one thing that's always funny is I remember when Chevrolet this summer or past summer released the C8 Corvette. Many people are like, oh, this is what a Porsche Boxster would be with a V8. And you've actually done that.
It's funny. I halfway expected either Porsche sometime in the not too distant past or GM within the last couple of years to walk in the door and say, hey, can we steal some cues off of what you've done? Of course, it never happened. And, I guess that was just a wild dream of mine. But you're exactly right. We have taken the kind of the best of both worlds, in my opinion, and we've taken the light, affordable, readily accessible, powerful, torquey V8 all aluminum, very simple pushrod engine of the Corvette and put it into a Porsche without necessarily bastardizing the Porsche. In other words, a lot of people, they look at what they do and they say, well, they're putting that great big heavy motor in the back of their Porsche is just horrible. Well, actually, what people don't realize is 911 engines are very, very heavy. And LS engines are actually, for what they are very lightweight. The other argument to that is when you look at the fact that Porsche actually manufactures more V8 engines than flat six engines now by far because of the success of their SUV, and their Panamera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, you start realizing that the V8 is a pretty untouchable engine. It is an unbelievably well-balanced, easy, lightweight, very reliable platform. And even Porsche's proven it themselves. And so the naysayers and the purists that have given us hard time for years and years and years are starting to realize, okay, maybe Scott did have a good idea, and Renegade has been around for about 35 years and we're still in business. We're doing really good.
No, and I think you have a good point, because it seems, whatever you put a V8 into, whether, it's a Formula One car or, a luxury sedan like a Mercedes S-Class, it's just always a good engine.
That's true. Absolutely.
Yeah. So when did you first start building Porsches?
I think the very first Porsche I had was a 914. I was 17 years old. I remember buying it. I believe it was either $500 or $600. It didn't even have a driver's side door because it was hit pretty hard in the driver's side door. I was born and raised in Southern California, down in the Ventura County area. I remember driving all the way to the next county with a buddy of mine, purchasing the car. The owner of the car assured me that it would make it home. I didn't realize that it'd be missing a door, but I did actually know, because Jeeps drive around without doors, that it would be okay. But I drove all the way back on the 101 freeway without a driver's side door in my Porsche 914, and I couldn't have been happier. I think I owned 7 or 8 914s through the years prior to when I purchased Renegade, and then I've had a couple incredibly impressive V8 converted Porsches ever since then when it comes to 914s. And then, of course, I've done some 911s, including a 996, a Boxster, a 930, a 944, a couple 928s, and on and on and on and on. So I've had definitely a long list of Porsches. I currently have a 997 right now, so that kind of gives you an idea.
So, of your builds you've done, obviously you've done quite a few. Which one is your favorite, or your group of your favorites you've done?
Well, I got to say my first love is a 914, just because it was my first love. But you have to do so much to a 914 to really get it to the point in which you can drive it as spiritedly as what I would be driving it. And so I would have to say that going the extreme opposite direction and going all the way up to like a 996 or really a 997, they're already fully capable cars. They've got giant brakes, excellent suspension, really, really good platforms. They're solid as a rock. The aftermarket industry, it really does an excellent job with supporting the cars. They're beautiful. The 997 is a beautiful car. And then doing a V8 conversion to a 997, I'm sorry, it works perfectly. The engines are literally exactly the same weight. The V8, however, has a lot more mid-range torque, which makes the car even that much easier to drive. And so between the two, honestly, I would have to say probably the 997 now, but the 914s are such cool cars.
No, you got a good point. I do love the 914s for sure, and the 997 is one of my favorite generations of the 911.
Agreed.
So, did you originally start building outlaw Porsches before you were involved with the company, or what really inspired you to start doing this?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I did. As you heard, I had several 914s. Obviously, ththose little 1.8, 1.7, 2-liter, whatever motors came in it, they were just not particularly impressive. Before I purchased Renegade, I just needed more power. And so I made very, very good relations with the owners of Renegade. And they basically, through 17 years of them being in business, I probably knew them about 13 or 14 of the 17 years before I purchased the company. And during that period of time, I helped them do a little bit of design work, quite a bit of sales work, just whatever I possibly could in order for me to be able to afford buying parts from them. So I did my first conversion before I even purchased the company. And then in 2000 is when I actually purchased the company from Andy and Emily. And from then, I moved it to Las Vegas immediately and grew it from there. And it's been tremendously successful. We have a very long waiting list for in-house conversions, and we sell parts all over the world. And I'm proud to say that even through this nice little virus crisis that we're in, we're still going strong. And thankfully, because we are an automotive business, which is deemed essential, because we do actually do some automotive repair for locals in the area. We love to support our Vegas and Henderson residents that are here. We still keep our garages open, and we still have our mechanics on duty, practicing all of the best social distancing, that is.
No, that is awesome for sure. Well, if I ever come out to Las Vegas anytime soon, I'll definitely have to come by, because, that sounds awesome.
Well, that would be great. I'd love to take you for a ride. And if you happen to come out with your learner's permit, that's going to happen, tomorrow, right?
Yeah, June 30th.
And there you go. Then we'll even put you in the driver's seat and get you to drive one.
Oh my gosh, that would be so amazing. Hopefully, once this virus is over and everyone stays home, I could definitely come out and do that, because that would be unbelievable.
Very good, Joey. Wait, I get to ask you a question, a really quick question. And the only reason why I'm going to do this is because of the fact that I'm immensely impressed by you. Why on earth are you the one that's sitting there at your advanced age giving these fantastic interviews? What compels you to do this? Obviously you're I'm guessing you're 15, 14 and a half, 15, something like that?
You got it right, 15.
Okay. You're amazing beyond words. What brought you to this microphone?
All right, a little bit of a long story, but I'll explain it. So my mom, she's always had this 1999 Porsche Boxster, and I remember when I was little, I'd always go for drives in it, and it was just super fun, but I wasn't necessarily into cars yet. I just liked riding in it. And I think once I was like 11 or something, I got the Need for Speed video game, and that kind of introduced me to cars. And then I went to my first car show, And then I started really just enjoying driving in the Porsche. Obviously, I was a passenger, and I still am. But I taught myself how to drive manual at age 11. And then when I was, let's see, I was either 12 or 13, for Christmas, I really wanted this Thrustmaster simulator so I could kind of drive on my own. And I was able to get it and start playing through Gran Turismo. And I just fell in love with driving in cars. And then, let's see, 2 years ago, I went to a PCA show. I found an advert for an Instagram, of all places. And I was like, all right, let's check this out. And I met some amazing folks. And I was like, wow, I think we should join PCA. A couple months later, I went to the Galpin Car Show. And I then started realizing, you know, after taking many photos and videos, that I could actually start a YouTube channel and start, you know, telling people about cars and just filming from car shows. And at the same time, also before, when I was in 6th grade, so 4 years ago now, I drove my very first go-kart, and it was a, you know, slow electric kart at MB2 Raceway. But I really fell in love with, you know, the driving in real life there, because that was the first real life driving I could do besides my grandma's golf cart. But I all of a sudden love karting, and I'm still racing go-karts to this day, obviously now outdoors and, you know, with almost professional level drivers. But I just started falling in love with cars, and through this YouTube channel that I was able to grow, I've just been meeting so many different people. And one of the cool things I got to do was go to this private Porsche collection of Stanley Golds. And through PCA, I've just been able to meet so many people. And they invited me to host this part of the virtual California Festival of Speed. And so that's where we are right now.
Outstanding. I mean, you're the true story. You're the true star. You really are. This is terrific. I hope that your generation and generations to come join us. I happen to be one of the older generations, but join us in the love of the car. It's unfortunately something that is a fact with PCA, that we have a lot of the older generations that really appreciate the cars. Primarily because of the fact that they're not necessarily as flashy as something like a Lamborghini or whatever, you know, any of the other ones. What you're appreciating, obviously, over your left shoulder is the engineering of the car, and over the right shoulder is kind of the evolution of the racing car. What you're appreciating, what you're talking about, is all stuff in my mind that really should and can be relayed to your generation. And through video games, even, you guys now starting to do more tuning and changing your tires and changing various different settings, engines, and things like that. That right there actually is the conduit to get people into something that is as sophisticated as a Porsche. So I think it's pretty outstanding. Joey, you've done a great job. You are the star, my friend. You are the star.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for doing the overall interview and helping out with this virtual California Festival of Speed. This is awesome.
Joey, you're a tremendous asset to California Festival of Speed, and I wish you the greatest to your future. By all means, when you come to Vegas, you better look me up, okay?
Oh, I will, for sure. Thank you so much. That means a lot.
Thank you, brother.
All right, so that was my interview with Scott Mann. And like I said about Scott Mann, just absolutely fascinating guy, one of the nicest people I've ever met, and one of my biggest fans yet I've met. And so just super amazing guy. And so I actually have a couple questions I'm going to answer here. First one is from Mary Robbins of, Joey, who is your favorite race car driver and why? So this is a tough one because I like a lot of racing drivers, but I think if I were to make a list of a top 3, my favorite vintage driver would have to be Jim Clark. He was just one of the best drivers of all time, and his passion was unbelievable. And the thing about Jim Clark was no matter what car he went in, he just always won. And unfortunately, he got killed at a young age in a crash, but percentage-wise and championship-wise, he's still considered one of the greatest of all time. And then for modern drivers, I think Lewis Hamilton. I mean, it's just the way Hamilton can drive a car and adapt to it is just unbelievable. You know, from his rookie season, finishing second, and, you know, he's a 6-time champion, and Hamilton's consistency is unbelievable, and it's just the amount of work he puts in is just crazy. And I think, you know, in the future, we'll look back at Hamilton as, you know, the next Michael Schumacher, the next guy who just totally revolutionized motorsport. And so those are my 2 favorite racing drivers of all time. So one thing I do want to clear up, I did have an issue with the giveaway. So the names I mentioned, you did win, but that was for a random giveaway for just being part of the photo contest and the kids art contest and all that. The actual winners will be announced tomorrow, and those will win the Porsche watch and some other prizes. So sorry about that. Ooh, looks like my camera's cut out here. But once again, I'm sorry about that. I don't know exactly how the confusion happened. But my next interview I want to do is some sim racers for PCA who are actually going to be racing in tomorrow's live race for the Festival of Speed. And it's pretty cool, this event. So normally, the Porsche Club of America would have this event at Auto Club Speedway in Fontana. And there would be, I think, 4 or 3 different classes of racing. And obviously this year, because of the coronavirus, they've had to cancel that. And so the cool thing about sim racing is you can actually set that all up. And so what they're going to be doing is they're going to be having multiple classes in iRacing for people to race from their home on their simulator if they have one. And so we're going to talk with 2 sim racers who are going to be competing. And so our first one is Jim Hemig, and he is the PCA National Director of Marketing. So he's pretty high up in PCA, very nice guy, and his whole story about PCA sim racing, and he's kind of the one who founded PCA sim racing. Again, I'm sorry about the camera going out. I'm not sure what happened there. But let me show you the Jim Hemig interview. Let's see, and Jim Hemig, here we go. Enjoy. So I'm now going to introduce Jim Hemig, and he is a PCA sim racer, and he's got a vast experience behind Porsches, racing, sim racing, and the whole 9 yards. So let's introduce Jim right here.
Hey, Joy, how you doing? Hey, I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of yours, watching all your videos. I got to say, not only are the videos fun and entertaining, but you know a lot about cars for a young man. So
Thank you.
compliments.
You know, one of the things is, I always try to be passionate, even though I can't drive, which, it's one of the interesting parts of, I think, it's kind of cool about PCA is you don't actually have to do the driving bit, and there's just so many experiences you can do besides driving, such as, sim racing and car shows. And
Yeah, car enthusiasm has many facets. And as you know, it could be go-karting, it could be sim racing, it could be car shows. There's one like it. I think this was my, not literally this car, but it was an older version of this 917. It was my first Porsche ever. And I got into Porsches before I could drive, kind of like what you're doing. And I just love all things Porsche. And I've got a couple of them, a couple cars. I actually have 3 Porsche bicycles. I have all this Porsche stuff in my office. And when sim racing started coming along, it was very interesting to be able to jump into, virtually, jump into a Porsche and drive around tracks. And with sim racing, you can drive around tracks that you'd probably never go to in your real life, or get a chance to drive on in your real life, like the Nürburgring, Le Mans. And then, of course, every track under the sun, and in cars that you normally can't have access to. Driving the Porsche 919 hybrid around Nürburgring is something that I would never get a chance to, but in sim racing you can. So my full-time job is the marketing director for Porsche, the Porsche Club of America. And as a club member and the marketing guy, we're always looking for new things to do with the Porsche Club of America. And sim racing landed on our radar, and a lot of our members wanted to try this whole sim racing thing. So about a little over a year ago, we formed the first Porsche Club of America Sim Racing League, and we've got now over 200 drivers that are racing in our series. And we had one this last Friday night, and we raced at Silverstone Raceway in the United Kingdom. So we're having a lot of fun. Have you done any sim racing?
I actually do have a simulator at my house. I'm currently using Gran Turismo on the PlayStation. And no, like you said, I think the cool thing with sim racing is, the cost isn't really there. And just the fact that you can just, drive all these amazing cars that, you normally see in a museum, Like, for example, I did the 919 at the Nürburgring, and running sub 6 minutes there, it's insane.
Isn't that crazy?
It
And
is.
that track is so long. I mean, you're in that car going so fast. You're like, I sure hope this next corner is going right, because if it's not, I'm going off the track.
Exactly, and there's no room for error at that track. That is for sure.
What's your favorite Porsche to drive in sim?
I think the 919 probably is, just simply because I think with the prototype cars, just the sheer level of grip they have from the downforce and the tires and everything, it's just amazing, especially the high speed stuff, how quick you can just take them. I mean, it's
But let
unbelievable.
me give you a pro tip. I think my favorite car to drive in Forza is the 550 Spider.
That's a
It
good one.
having no top. It's a Spider, and being able to see everything around you. And there's it doesn't go very fast. It doesn't have a lot of grip, but it's just such a cool car to drive.
No, I definitely agree with you. There is something about, the raw open top cars. And, it's funny. One of my other favorite ones I love driving is, I want to say 57, could be wrong in the year, but 356 Speedster race converted. And, I love running that with the other vintage cars at Goodwood, like the Goodwood Revival.
Yeah, yeah. Isn't that fun?
And
So
just
where could you do that in real life? That's such a hard goal to achieve. Not that it's unsurmountable, but jumping in and doing that on a weekend in a simulator is such a kick. So
it is.
what you need to do next is you need to look into getting iRacing.
I've been looking into that.
iRacing, you can join the PCA Sim Racing Series. We've got people that are your age racing against. I think the oldest guy in our league that's willing to admit his age is 67 years old.
That's pretty good.
We have young people all the way up to people in their 60s racing against each other. And so what we started out with last year is we started with one series, and everybody raced together, and we had 30, just over 30 cars on the grid, 30 drivers. And the program has exploded and increased into where now we have, as I mentioned, over 200. The expansion's been so quick that we've had to make adjustments almost every week, and now we're up to having 4 races on Friday night, where we started with one, and we have to divide everybody up into different skill sets. So now we have 4 different races on Friday nights, and it's everything from rookies that just got started to professional level drivers. So if you got iRacing, you could jump in with us, and you wouldn't have to worry about being new at it, because you'd be grouped with a bunch of new drivers. And then as you got better, you would progress up the ranks until you were a pro driver.
Yeah, exactly. I got to get myself a PC and join that because that sounds very fun. Um, So, what do you like and dislike about sim racing? Because I know one thing a lot of people talk about is, with the force feedback now, everything's realistic. But the one big factor it's always missing is, the actual G forces and the feeling. Do you kind of go along the same page with that, or?
Well, of course, yeah. So you have to get used to using your eyes more than your, that G-force sensory. So if you're in a car, you can feel when you're braking and when you're turning, and you can feel when you're, might be losing control. And in sim racing, you don't have that same. At least I don't. Some of these guys have these full motion simulators that are like $20,000. I just have a steering wheel and pedals and a TV monitor, and the steering wheel's force feedback, so you can definitely feel the bumps, and you can feel things like when somebody hits your car, but it's not the same. So what I dislike is that you don't have that same, you don't feel those G forces. But I'll tell you, the positives way make up for it. My 2 Porsches, I hate to get them on the track too much these days, because it's just so expensive to replace tires and brakes. And if somebody hits me, or if I lose control, that's a lot of money. So I'm not going to race every single weekend in my cars. But in this, in sim racing, I can literally do it every day.
Yeah, just press reset.
I press reset. If I crash a car, I press reset. My tires are, wearing out, I press reset, or I go in the pits and get new tires. It's super easy on the pocketbook. But I'll tell you, the best thing about sim racing is it's very addicting.
Oh, it is.
So we race on Fridays, and then immediately on Saturday and Sunday, we all start practicing together. And we have these huge groups of people that are practicing on the track that we're going to race next Friday. And then we have practice races on Monday and Tuesday, and we have an official practice race on Wednesday. And it's very addicting because you start getting into it. And it's like you don't want to stop. It's that
Right.
much fun.
So a lot of people obviously have different setups. You know, some people it's just wheel and pedal, some have a cockpit, some have full motion. So what racing setup do you have for your sim racing?
Well, yeah. So some people got into this, and before you had these paddle shifters, and they have actually a clutch and a stick, and they're actually going through the gears like you would in a manual transmission. Um, that is more challenging and probably more rewarding. But I like having a steering wheel with the paddle shifters because you can shift so fast. It's like having a PDK in your Porsche. So you can come into a corner and be really hot on the brakes and just downshift, bang, 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 from sixth down into second gear. And so I like having a motion feedback steering wheel with the paddle shifting, and then having with the pedals. I only have to have two pedals, a gas and a brake. But I'll tell you, I got a Thrustmaster steering wheel and pedals for, I think it was under $200, I think, on eBay. And then I just stole a TV out from under my wife out of our bedroom and plugged the PC into that and my steering wheel and pedals, and I'm racing. And so it doesn't really cost that much to get started in iRacing. The biggest challenge is you don't just go to the store and say, give me an iRacing setup, because you can't go to Best Buy. Nobody knows what that is. So you have to have a PC with a graphics card, and then you got to go and buy steering wheel. And we created a website to help people get started with this. If anybody wants to get started with sim racing and wants to join the PCA, the Porsche Club of America Sim Racing Series, just go to pcasimracing.com. And there's a resource page that has all kinds of information about what kind of equipment to get, how to get started. We even have a what we call an EDE session. It's electronic driver education. It's a free program for PCA members. So if you have iRacing, you can sign up for an EDE program, and one of our better drivers will get you started and show you how to drive on the track and help you with your settings. And again, that's a free service for PCA members, and so the cost of entry is not real high, and there's a real easy way to get started and get some help.
Oh, that is pretty awesome because, one of the things a lot of people like doing if they go to actual track days is, the whole driver's education and, learning from not professionals, but, people who are very experienced. And the fact that you can do that from your house on a simulator, that's so awesome.
And one thing that we tried to do, so you're familiar with Porsche Club of America, I know. And so what we try to do with the sim racing program is pretty much mirror what PCA does with everything else. So our sim racing series is very, very similar to PCA's club racing program, down to the rules and the kind of cars we use, a lot of the same tracks. It's very similar to club racing. And then, as you pointed out, the driver's education. So our EDE program is very similar to DE.
So do you have any advice for people getting into sim racing or getting into racing or track days in real life?
My advice is usually the same for whether it's track or sim racing. Don't be afraid to ask for help, and ask for someone to help kind of give you some guidance, somebody to help mentor you, whether it's a track DE or a sim EDE. There's people there that want to and actually enjoy helping people get started. So, usually people show up to one of these events kind of shy, not sure what to ask. They don't want to, interrupt anybody. But in Porsche Club of America, we're just full of people that want to help get other people started and answer questions and help them out. And so, yeah, my most common advice is just, ask questions and ask for help, and you'll find a lot of support.
Well, thank you so much for your time. This has definitely been a pleasure and very nice to meet you virtually. So thank you again. All right, so we are back here. I'm going to go back to our camera, and it is on right now. So I'm going to try playing the 919 lap again and kind of discuss one of the beauties of being a car enthusiast is that you don't actually have to drive. And like Jim said, there's just so many things you can do, like sim racing and car shows and, car photography and all that. And so one of the things I'm interested in maybe doing, and you guys should let me know if I should do this, is maybe have more live streams where I talk about sim racing or car news or discuss the multiple enthusiasts and maybe like have a group live stream or something. Because I think this whole live stream concept, it's obviously still pretty new, but I think there's a lot of potential. So let me know if you guys want to see more live streams. So I'm going to try playing the lap of the Porsche 919 and our camera there quit for a second, but I'm going to try playing that again. And if it doesn't work, oh well, but we're going to try. Obviously, our luck may not be the best, but we can always try. And so let's try playing this again. And let's see. It's not playing. All right. Well then, sorry about that. We're having more technical difficulties. This is not good. Like I said, I'm very new to this. Hold on one second. I'm so sorry about this. Let me fix this. Let's see. All right. So, sorry about that. Our camera quit again and then flipped. As I said, this is my first live stream. I am very new to this, and so you just got to give me a little bit of credit for that. And so we're going to get back to this again. So we do have a few questions. So first one from Stan asking about the spotter aspect of PCA sim racing. Good point. So one of the cool things is that with iRacing and PCA sim racing, you have a thing called a spotter. So what a spotter does, they don't have this in Formula One or any of the European series, but in IndyCar they have it. They essentially let you know what cars are near you. Is there a car in front, car behind, car to the side? And so it's kind of like having blind spot monitors, but with an actual person telling car on the right, be careful. And so that's one of the cool things about this race is, obviously people who don't have virtual reality and can't look around, they'll be able to have a spotter tell them what cars are near, and so it should make the racing quite interesting. Let's see. Another question we have. Very excited about the iRacing event. Yes, it's going to be amazing. iRacing events are always good, and I think because it's a spec series as well, everyone's going to have equal cars, and so the competition will definitely be there. Spec series racing is always the tightest, obviously, as all the cars are the same. So we're going to get back to this. So we're now at our final interview, and our final interview is actually, I guess you could say, my first international interview. He lives in the U.S., but he is from Great Britain. This is from Alex Helyer. He is the president of his local PCA region. He also does a lot with the track days and performance driving, and he's also going to be racing in tomorrow's event, so make sure to look out for him. And so let's go play that interview with him and get to learn about him. All right, let's see. And here he is. Interview today with Alex Helyer, and he is a sim racer for PCA, also the president of his PCA region, and experience with the whole Porsche PCA Junior program. So, Alex, welcome to the show.
Hi, how you doing?
Doing quite good. How about you?
Good, good. So, disappointed Festival of Speed is cancelled this year, so we were looking forward to that. But this whole virtual reality movement is a way forward in this time and what's going on right now.
That is true. I mean, maybe, we'll see more virtual events like this if it's, successful, which I think it will be.
Bit about myself. I'm English. I came out here a few years back and lived up in Seattle. Then I moved down to California. I was here for about a year, and I became the president for the California Inland region. And then got into sim racing quite a while ago. I've always been into video games and like you say, Gran Turismo, Outrun, Pole Position back in the 80s, all the old video games.
So you've been doing sim racing for quite a while then?
Yeah, I'm not great at it. I just enjoy doing it.
Yeah, same here, you know. I mean, there's so many people who spend, you know, so many hours, but, you know, the point of it's just fun. And, you know, I think that's just kind of whole part of the Porsche Club life is, you know, it's just having a good time. And no, I definitely agree with you. It's definitely fun for sure. What do you like and dislike about sim racing?
I just enjoy the fact that I can just jump on there anytime. Doesn't matter what the weather is, because I've done track days. I've started doing autocrossing with our region, and it's a whole day. You've got to set your car up, you've got to pack it up, you've got to drive out to the event, and then you've got to wait and sit around and do all that sort of stuff. Whereas I can be watching TV, I'll have my dinner, and then I'll go and do a race, and I'll just jump on and get on there. And I get the same adrenaline buzz racing against other people online as you do at the track. I come off and I'm sweating and I'm shaking. It's good. It's an experience.
And that is one of the things I like about sim racing is it's very convenient. You know, you can just hop on from your house. You don't have to go anywhere, and you know everything's just right there. It's simple to set up and it's quick. And I mean, I think that's part of the fun bit is, and especially the adrenaline rush part of it, because it's surprising. You know, you're not feeling the G-forces, but you know through force feedback and everything. I mean, you're genuinely. I guess you could say you're still driving.
Yeah, and I have a full Oculus Rift set up as well. So I have the VR headset, and you look around, you can see your apexes, and it literally brings another dimension to the whole virtual racing.
Yeah, and I've tried the VR simulators before, and you know mine isn't VR, but when I tried it at the Porsche Experience Center, it's unbelievable because you know like in real life you can actually look around, and I mean it genuinely.
Yeah,
it's
almost hypnotizing. I first tried it on. I sat in the car and I was just checking out all the weave on the carbon fiber and everything, and all the textures inside, and it's like you're in the car.
Because you actually, you know, you get to look in the interior and everything, and it's quite stunning. So what is your setup for, like, you know, your cockpit, I guess, or your wheel and pedals and all that?
So I have an old Subaru Forester seat attached to a wooden base, and just a wooden table with I have a Fanatec steering wheel. It's the Porsche GT3 RS steering wheel, and the Fanatec, I think it's the CSL Elite pedals. Bought it as a package way back, about 2015, I think. And it's been good to me, and I use it quite regularly. Graphics card is like a 1080, I think. So it's an older computer that I use, just keep upgrading bits and pieces as I need to.
Now, one thing a lot of people have quite a bit of confusion with is, especially with iRacing, since, you know, it's a subscription on PC, is what kind of computer do you need to run iRacing with?
The iRacing website actually has the minimum minimum specifications, should I say. But I've run it on an old laptop. You just turn the graphics settings down, and you can run it. I had a laptop with, again, same wheel and pedals. I definitely recommend wheel and pedals. I've tried it with a gamepad, and it's not the same, and you'll end up just wrecking somebody, and they won't be happy about it because there's a lot of money spent in iRacing.
That is true. And I remember the first time when I think, gosh, it's almost 5 years ago or something, and I think I was, you know, my PlayStation thing with like Need for Speed, and I was like, yeah, it's fun, but like you feel like you have no control. And then I remember once I got, you know, my whole Thrustmaster setup, I was like, oh my goodness, you know, I actually have control. I'm actually driving, like, you know, it's all coming together. And I think that's a good point you bring up is, you know, the wheel and pedals, it's surprisingly important, you know, even though you're not actually driving. And the technology is just so good now.
Yeah, and I play PlayStation. I've got a PS4. I've played Gran Turismo, Need for Speed. I've pretty much completed all of the Gran Turismos from day one. Love those games. But again, it's just a joypad. It's not quite the same as the real. I class iRacing as a simulator. So I know a lot of top drivers, like racing pros, actually use that for practice as well. So
no, you got a very good point. And obviously, we've seen, you know, with the whole virus and everyone staying at home, you know, there's F1, IndyCar, you name it, they're all, you know, practicing with iRacing or any type of simulator, and it's been proven, you know, they've seen that through it, you know, a lot of the techniques and skills can transfer over, and I think that's pretty cool, especially because, you know, you don't have to go to the track and pay a fee or rent something, and you know, it's all just right there.
Yeah, and the beauty about iRacing is the fact that they actually laser scan the tracks in. So they actually have these trucks that go out on the track, laser scan. So every single little crack in the pavement you feel as you're driving it in real life, you'll see it in iRacing in the game.
And then, you know, once you arrive to the track, you know, you already know it. That's the amazing part, without even driving an actual lap. So do you have any advice for people getting into sim racing or, you know, just performance driving in real life with like track days and things?
I definitely recommend going out and trying a DE with the PCA, and I've done a few DEs now, and had a lot of experience going out. You have an instructor with you telling you how to do it all, and the autocross is a lot of fun. I think if you just get out there and try it out and enjoy it. And for sim racing, same thing. If you can get into iRacing, it's great. You start off, you have to go through a novice license, and then you work your way up. You get an I rating and a safety rating. And depending on how well you do in your races, you basically build up your skill levels, you learn your racecraft, and you get better as you go through it. And yeah, just practice. I'm still learning myself.
Yeah, that's the thing with racing, you know, you're just always practicing, and, you know, it's a bunch of small improvements, but it makes a big difference overall. So how much seat time do you think over all the years do you think you've spent, like, I don't know, per day or per month, if you were like to average it all out?
No, since I have a family, have kids, and I work a lot. So for me now, I probably spend a few hours on a weekend, a few nights a week maybe. Way back, probably around about 2015, I was spending a lot more time on it, and then kind of life got in the way and had to sort of like do work and things around the house and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah, I mean, you know, I try to do as much as I can, but, you know, I have school. Obviously, I'm a kid. But, you know, that's the kind of the beauty of it, is because it's not like a firm schedule, it's very flexible and you can set everything up and it kind of works to your schedule. And I think that's kind of the beauty with sim racing. It's just how customizable it is.
exactly.
Well, thank you so much for your time and coming on for this interview.
Oh, you're welcome. It's my pleasure.
All right, so that was our interview with Alex Helyer. Hopefully our camera's back on. Been having a lot of issues with this thing today. Like I said, I'm new to streaming. It's a whole new ball game. But we have another thing exciting to announce. We do have a giveaway here that our sponsor, Pelican Parts, will be giving away. It's a crazy one. So it's a detailing kit from Griot's Garage, you might have heard of. I've done a couple of videos on their products. Valued at $375, including some wax, interior details, a quick clean, wheel cleaner, car wash soap, brushes, a bag, and everything. And the winner of that, which is this kit right here, so you can see, the winner of that is, I'm going to blow this username again, sorry about that, Lynn Rule from Egg Adventures with a 1988 911 Carrera. So congratulations on winning that. And Alex was our last interview of the day, so hopefully you guys enjoyed hearing from different people in the Porsche world, from people who build crazy cars like Scott Mann to people who work in PCA like Jim Hemig and sim racers like Alex and the whole 9 yards of the Porsche world. So let me know if you guys want to see more live streams like this, or, you know, with sim racing or trying out all the different parts of the car world. And so thank you to everyone who watched this live, and if you're not watching this live, well, thank you for still watching. This will be on my YouTube channel, at the Stiglette, and the California Festival Speed channel. So make sure to go subscribe to the Stiglette, my channel, and the California Festival Speed channel, so you can stay up to date with any more content we're pushing out. And just everyone, thank you so much for doing this stream. It was a pleasure to do this, and I gotta say, for my very first stream, considering how many hours I put in and all the behind the scenes work, and, you know, considering I'm a high school student and I'm doing all of this together by myself, I'm pretty happy with this. Again, I'm sorry about the technical difficulties. But after this stream, we're going to have that Porsche girl coming on for her interviews at 12 o'clock. So make sure to tune in there. And that'll be on this channel again, I believe. Not sure if that's live or not. And then our final question from Stan Kaplan. What are the different cars racing tomorrow? So tomorrow, there will be, I believe, 3 classes, rookie, intermediate, and advanced. I don't know if that's the actual names, but there are 3 classes. So we're going to have, I think the rookie class is like a 911 road car or something. I know the intermediate's a Porsche Cayman GT4 Club Sport. And then the professional level will be the Porsche 911 GT3 Cup. Very long name. And that will be the racing tomorrow. So that'll be on, I believe, 7 or 5 p.m. Pacific time. Not sure. Again, check the Festival Speed website for that. That'll be an awesome event for sure. So that'll be tomorrow. But thank you to everyone for tuning into the stream, and I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm Joey the Stiglette, and thank you so much.